Just a few weeks ago, I was getting used to living alone after my breakup. I was 32 and working as a freelance graphic designer. My new apartment was small but cozy. I felt good about finally having my own space. Most nights were peaceful, except for the distant sound of traffic outside. On the second night, I worked late into the evening. The light from my desk lamp flickered, creating odd shadows on the walls. I had my headphones in, absorbed in my project, when I heard a faint tapping on my window. I thought it was just branches moving. Could be the wind. I let it go and kept working, trying to ignore it. As the week passed, that tapping grew louder. It felt rhythmic, almost like a pulse. I started to hear it in the living room late at night. My heart raced each time. Shadows flitted past my window often. I turned quickly to look, but I always found nothing. I felt a creeping unease, as if someone was watching me. The lights even flickered sometimes, leaving me with a sick feeling in my stomach. I kept busy with work, but I often glanced at the window. I never saw anything strange outside, but glimpses of movement lingered in my vision. My skin crawled with cold dread. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. It didn't help that I felt more tired with every passing day. One night, in the early hours, that tapping returned. It was louder than I'd ever heard. I got up from my desk, the floor chilly under my feet. I felt a shiver run up my spine as I moved toward the window. The tapping was right there, relentless. I leaned in closer, peering through the glass. I thought I saw a shape move just outside, but when I blinked, it was gone. A wave of fear washed over me. I stepped back, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to think. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. Everything was dark. I didn't know how long it was until the lights flickered back on. I stayed frozen, staring at the window. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper from behind me. I turned quickly, but found no one there. My pulse raced, and I felt the air grow thick with fear. Whatever was happening was beyond explanation. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't shake that feeling. Shadows loomed larger than they should have. I eventually settled on the couch, hoping to calm down. That peaceful independence I had craved felt like a distant memory. I stayed alert, waiting for the next sound. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't turn away from the window. I didn't want to know what I might see again, but I couldn't help staring. That quiet, creeping dread was now my constant companion. I wondered if I would ever feel safe in my own home again. The next day, I couldn't concentrate on my work. Every soft sound made me jump. The tapping had invaded my thoughts. I tried to shake it off. Maybe a good walk would help clear my mind. I needed sunlight and fresh air. I stepped outside, but the world felt different. The air was thick, the sky a muted gray. Still, I walked down the street, hoping to shake off the growing tension. With each step, the anxiety from the night before faded just a little. I smiled at the barista when I grabbed coffee, and for a moment, I felt normal again. Returning home, the sense of being watched crept back in like a shadow. I opened my laptop and tried to focus. Hours passed, and I lost myself in designs and colors, but I always felt that nagging sense of dread. I checked the time. It was already dark outside. I pulled the curtains closed, hoping to block out whatever might be lurking beyond the glass. As I worked, I realized I hadn't heard that tapping in a while. Relief washed over me. Maybe I had imagined everything. I took a deep breath and focused on the screen. Then, just as I settled back into my groove, it started again. A series of sharp taps like fingernails drumming against the glass. My heart sank. I slowly turned to the window, but the darkness was too thick to see anything outside. The tapping turned frantic, and I felt a layer of panic building in my chest. I grabbed my phone, ready to call somebody, anybody, for comfort. But I hesitated. What would I say? That I was hearing things? Just then, the lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows across the walls. My fingers trembled as I typed a message to a friend, but I couldn't hit send. I felt stupid for being scared. I just needed to breathe. I walked into the living room, hoping it would feel different. As I moved through the space, I felt the tension thicken again. That's when I noticed something on the floor, an envelope. I hadn't seen it before. My heart raced with curiosity and dread. I picked it up, noticing my name scrawled across it in messy handwriting. I hesitated, glancing at the window. My instincts told me to toss it, but something urged me to open it. I tore it open, my hands shaking. Inside was a single piece of paper. There were no words, just a crudely drawn figure that looked like it was peering in through a window. The drawing sent chills down my spine. It was like it knew everything. As I stared, the tapping resumed, louder than ever. This time, it felt urgent, demanding my attention. I dropped the envelope, my breath quickening. I realized then, whatever was watching me wasn't just outside. It had come inside my mind. That's when I heard a whisper again, closer this time, chilling my blood. Let me in. Cold shiver raced down my spine. I knew at that moment that this was only the beginning. I stood frozen, the whisper echoing in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was outside was no longer confined to the window. I took a step back, heart racing, and grabbed my phone, but the weight of my fear held me in place. The tapping had escalated into a constant drumming, a relentless rhythm that pulsed through my body. Against my better judgment, I turned back to the window, the pitch darkness now almost oppressive. I held my breath, squinting to see if anyone was out there. Nothing, just the silence that felt too heavy. Then there was a noise from the hallway, something crashing, like a picture frame falling. I jumped, my mind raced. Had I forgotten to secure something? Or was it a sign? I inched toward the hallway, dread pooling in my stomach. Shadows curled around the corners, and every creak made me flinch. The air felt charged, electric. I thought of the envelope, of the figure drawn inside. It felt too connected to what was happening. I had to act. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. I eased my way down the hall, the light shaking in my hand as I ran through possibilities. Maybe it was just the wind or a mysterious neighbor. But what if it was worse? I turned the corner and saw it. The living room lamp had toppled over, casting a long shadow across the floor. My heart raced. I set the flashlight on a nearby table and bent down to pick up the lamp. A chill ran over my skin, prickling my arms. The lamp was cold, noticeably colder than everything else in the room. It felt wrong. As I stood up, I heard it, a soft thump from my bedroom. I hesitated, the hairs on my neck rising. The whisper came again, clearer this time, as if it was floating from within the walls. Let me in. I swallowed hard. Adrenaline coursed through me, urging me to move. My feet dragged as I made my way to the bedroom door. I hesitated, pressing my ear against it. Silence. Holding my breath, I slowly turned the knob, feeling the cool metal against my palm. The door creaked open, revealing a dark space that felt heavy and claustrophobic. I flicked on the flashlight, and that's when I saw it. A smudged handprint on the window, small, almost childlike. My breath caught and panic surged. How had someone gotten to my window? I was sure I had locked it. I stepped back, banging against the doorframe. The tapping was back, now a rhythmic beat, as if demanding my attention again. I didn't understand what was happening. Had I invited something in by opening that envelope? Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted something moving across the room. My blood ran cold. I wasn't alone anymore. I turned to run, but before I could reach the door, the room plunged into darkness. The flashlight flickered and went out, leaving me in utter blackness, with only the sound of frantic tapping closing in. I stumbled back against the door, heart pounding in my chest. The darkness wrapped around me like a cold blanket, suffocating. I could still hear the tapping, now mixed with a soft giggle, filling the air with an eerie, mocking quality. It felt as though the sound was circling me, creeping closer. My mind raced. What could possibly make that noise? I pressed my back against the door and tried to remember where I had seen the flashlight before it went out. The coldness in the room seemed to be breathing, expanding and contracting as if it had a life of its own. I forced myself to breathe deeply and focused on the thumping from the window. It was relentless, demanding attention, but every fiber of my being told me to get out. I couldn't just stand there, so I swung my hands to feel for the wall. I needed to find the light switch or something to hold on to. My fingertips brushed against the cool surface of the nightstand. I felt around, searching for the lamp, but the shadows deceived me. I hoped I wasn't playing games with something out of my control. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. An oppressive silence filled the room, and I froze. The giggle returned, louder now, echoing in the silence like a taunt. My breath caught again as I realized it was coming from the window. I shot toward the sound, desperate to face whatever was lurking there. Maybe it was just my mind running wild. I grasped the edge of the window frame, trembling as I tried to catch my breath. Then, without warning, a gust of cold wind rushed past me, sending chills down my spine and lapping at my skin. It carried whispers, like a chant, wrapping around me. I was burning with a mix of terror and curiosity. In a moment of reckless bravery, I flung the window wide open. The chill hit me in a wave, but I needed to confront this. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaky. "Show yourself." The wind died down, and through the silence, a small figure appeared. It took shape from the gloom, like an apparition materializing directly from my nightmare. A child, hunched and pale, stood outside. Its eyes were dark, unblinking, and unfathomable. "Let me in," it repeated, its voice now serene yet sinister, merging with the whispers that swirled around me. I gasped and leaned back, realizing I had made a grave mistake. As fear coursed through me, every instinct screamed to shut the window, but I was rooted in place. Then the lights flickered on, casting the room in stark brightness. My heart sank as I looked around. My bedroom was empty. The figure was gone, but the air felt thick with tension. I glanced back at the window, half expecting to see it staring at me again. That's when I noticed something on the floor. A small, grimy object caught the light. I bent down. It was a toy, a worn-out stuffed bear, its button eyes missing. This wasn't just an abandoned trinket. It was the same toy I had seen in the envelope. I held it tight, a sense of dread creeping back in. It felt like a thread connecting me to whatever had been in my room. My thoughts raced. What did this all mean? Then came the tapping sound again, now louder and more frantic. I turned, breath quickening. Someone or something was trying to come in. I felt the fear coiling in my stomach. I backed away from the window, clutching the stuffed bear, and prepared to confront whatever it was. Just as I backed away, the tapping morphed into a scratching sound. It was sharper, more insistent, and each scrape sent chills along my spine. I could see the shadows at my window shifting, like a dark mass was trying to get through. I glanced down at the bear, and the memory of the child's voice echoed in my mind. "Let me in." I clutched the stuffed toy tighter. Should I scream for help? Should I call someone? In the dim light, those thoughts felt like a distant dream. I couldn't risk turning my back to whatever was out there. My instincts yelled at me to run, but I was paralyzed, caught between fear and curiosity. The scratching became frantic. I felt the vibrations reverberate through the walls. I took a small step forward, hoping to see through the window, but when I peeked out, darkness consumed everything beyond the glass. Just a void, no signs of life. Still, I could hear it, the relentless scratching. My phone. I needed to grab my phone. It was charging beside the bed. The thought of retreating to move toward it filled me with dread. What if whatever was outside took the opportunity while I was distracted? Taking a deep breath, I cast my gaze away from the window just long enough to make a dash for my phone. I kept my attention split, half on the window and half on where I was headed. When I reached my nightstand, I snatched my phone and switched on the screen. The glow illuminated the room, but the light felt fragile, like it would inspire the darkness to fight back. I turned back toward the window, still fearful that the figure might reappear. Instead, the scratching had transformed into a low growl. It sent waves of panic crashing over me. Someone or something was definitely trying to get inside. I needed to do something. I dialed my neighbor's number, my fingers trembling against the screen. No answer. I cursed under my breath and threw my gaze back to the window. The silhouette of a small hand was now pressed against the glass. The child's fingers were long and bony, sticking through the narrow opening of the cracked window. It nearly made my heart stop. I backed away, but my eyes were glued to the horrible sight. "Let me in," it whispered again, sounding softer, almost pleading now. I felt my throat tighten as I clutched the bear. The connection felt too real. Then I noticed something else. The child's hand had claw-like nails, jagged and dirty, not at all how a child's hand should look. My breath hitched. I didn't want to acknowledge what that could mean, but every horror movie I'd seen rushed back into my mind. Desperate to regain some control, I swung my phone light on the toy bear. On its faded fabric, I noticed something. A small tag was stitched along the seam. My heart raced as I focused on the words, "Lost and Found, 38 Maple Street." In that instant, it felt like the very air shifted, pressing in on me. The giggle returned, echoing through the walls, but this time it was joined by another voice, one that sounded like my own, soft, scared, and questioning. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the other side of the window. The glass trembled, threatening to shatter. My instincts screamed to run, but where? The room felt smaller, and all I had was a stuffed bear and a phone. I took one last shaky look at the twisted hand before I darted toward the door. Whatever was trying to get in, I would not be there to meet it. I had to escape before it was too late. As I burst through the door, I felt a wave of fresh air hit my face, but it wasn't enough to shake off the dread that clung to me. The hallway was dark, and every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. I glanced back once, half expecting to see the hand still pressed against the window, but I forced myself to move. I paused for just a second to gather my thoughts. I needed protection. I couldn't just run out into the night without a plan. The living room felt vulnerable, too open, too inviting for whatever might come through that window. My heart raced as I headed toward the kitchen, searching for something to defend myself with. I rummaged through the drawers, my hand shaking as I pulled out a large knife. It felt heavy and cold in my grip, a small comfort in the rising tide of fear. I turned back toward the hallway, listening, waiting for that sound to emerge again. There was nothing but silence now, but I could feel the tension lingering in the air. I took one cautious step, then another, making my way down the dim corridor, the blade reflective in the muted light of the night. My mind raced with thoughts. What was that hand doing there? Who was the child at the window? I'd never seen anything like it, yet I felt a strange pull, like I was meant to find out more. Suddenly, the giggling returned. It was closer this time, echoing down the hallway like the sound of a hidden secret. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to the right, toward the source of the laughter. Part of me screamed to go back, to hide, but another part urged me to confront it. As I drew near the living room, I noticed an odd glow spilling from under the door. I hadn't left any lights on. My hands trembled as I leaned closer, the knife raised, the laughter growing louder now, almost playful. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew that laughter didn't feel innocent. With every step, the energy in the air thickened. I could feel it pressing against my skin, and I had to remind myself to breathe. Finally, I reached the door and gripped the knob tightly. I hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment. With a quick twist, I flung the door open, ready to confront whatever awaited me. The room inside was lit up by the soft glow of my phone laying on the couch, its screen illuminating something shocking. There, in the center of the living room, sat a second stuffed bear, identical to the one I had with me. But this one had that same tag sewn into it, the one that read, "Lost and Found, 38 Maple Street." I stumbled backward, confusion and dread battling within me. How had it gotten there? I was sure I'd left both bears in my room. The giggles came again, and I whirled around, heart pounding as I scanned the corners of the room, half expecting to see the child. That's when I spotted something, a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. I turned fully, knife raised. There was someone standing in the hallway now, silhouetted in the dim light. "Help me," it whispered, sounding eerily like my own voice. My grip tightened on the knife, but the urge to flee surged through me once more. What was happening? I felt trapped in a nightmare, and there was no escaping it now. The figure in the hallway took a half step forward, and I could barely breathe. "Who are you?" I managed to croak out, my voice shaking. The question lingered between us, heavy with unease. "Help me," it repeated, but the voice seemed to shimmer. It was my voice, yet it was wrong, distorted, as if it were being played back on a broken tape. Fear wrapped around my throat, choking me. I had to understand, but I didn't want to take a step closer. The shadow swayed slightly, and I noticed the edges of it were jagged, like a poorly cut photograph. It looked at me with wide, dark eyes that seemed to drink in the light, drawing me in. The laughter bubbled up again from behind, echoes of that eerie joy twisting through my mind. With a rush of adrenaline, I turned back to the living room, scanning for escape. My eyes landed on the second stuffed bear, still sitting innocently on the couch. It felt important. Somehow, like there was a secret woven into its fibers. I shifted my weight, mind racing. What if the answer lay with the bears? I set my jaw, swallowing the fear that clung to my stomach. I took a step back toward the couch, toward the bear. "Why are you here?" I whispered, half to myself, half to the shadow that still lingered in the doorway. Its silence felt resentful, like I had just broken an unspoken rule. My hand trembled as I reached for the bear, my finger brushing against the coarse fabric. The moment I touched it, the giggles crescendoed, volleying back and forth between the shadow and me. I snatched the bear, hoping it could somehow connect me with what was happening. The laughter faltered, and I realized the shadow was inching closer, drawn to the bear. "Please," it hissed softly, "you have to remember." Remember what? My heart thundered, pounding in my ears so loud I couldn't think straight. What was trying to surface from my memories? Panic surged within me. Suddenly, I had an urge to run. Every instinct screamed for me to get out of that house. Just as I turned to flee, I felt something brush against my arm, a cold, metallic touch that sent shivers skittering down my spine. I glanced at my arm and saw a tiny handprint glistening faintly in the dim light just above my elbow. Everything in me froze. The shadow had moved closer while I was distracted. It stood within arm's reach now, that familiar shape melded in darkness, whispering my name. I fought against the urge to scream. Then, as swiftly as it had appeared, the figure's face transformed, twisted into a cruel smile. "You can't escape," it sneered. And in that moment, I finally understood the grave danger I faced. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered, and everything went dark. I heard the bear thud to the ground as I stumbled back. But even in the blackness, the laughter kept swirling around me, this time louder, more menacing. "Help me," the shadow rasped again. And this time, I felt its desperation echo in my own chest. I turned to run back into the hallway, but something gripped my ankle, pulling me back towards the shadow. And that's when I realized, a strange realization mixed with dread. I wasn't the only one in this house anymore. I fought against the grip on my ankle, my heart racing as I kicked out wildly. The cold touch only tightened, and I stumbled, crashing to the floor. I scrambled back, pressing against the couch as I fought to keep my panic in check. My mind churned with thoughts. Was this some kind of twisted game? The darkness swallowed the living room, leaving only the sounds of the laughter swirling around me. I could barely tell where it was coming from. I forced myself to breathe, fighting to pull myself together. I needed to think clearly, but fear wrapped around me like a vice. Suddenly, the laughter froze, leaving an echoing silence that felt heavier than the shadows. I dared to peek toward the hallway where the figure had been. The darkness seemed to pulse there, shifting. "Help me," it whispered again, this time softer, almost pleading. I had to make a choice. As much as I wanted to ignore it, I felt a pull, a familiar ache in my chest. Was I responsible? What did it mean? With hesitant breaths, I reached for the bear that had rolled away during my fall. The instant my fingers brushed its fabric, the dim light of the room flickered back on, illuminating the space just enough for me to see. Then I noticed them. Tiny footprints leading from the hallway to the shadow, left in a strange silver dust. I blinked. Had they always been there? They were small, too small for an adult. A chill crept down my spine. They looked like child's footprints. "Where are you?" The words slipped from my lips before I could stop them. My voice echoed back softly, mixing with the remnants of the laughter. The shadow shifted, suddenly agitated. "It's not just me," it hissed, the voice now frayed and raw. I felt a shiver run through me. "You need to remember them." Remember who? My mind raced back to fragments, snatches of memories pieced together in a kaleidoscope of confusion and fear. Faces I couldn't quite grasp, their laughter drowned out by the menace surrounding me. In a moment of clarity, I locked eyes with the shadow. The eyes, dark and wide, mirrored my own panic. Was it really me? Was this an echo of my past? With a surge of determination, I stood up, adjusting my grip on the bear. I needed answers. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What happened?" The shadow hesitated. "You don't want to know," it whispered, but its tone was no longer menacing. It seemed to carry a weight, as if the burden of the truth rested heavily on its shoulders. Before I could respond, the laughter erupted again, louder and more chaotic. It filled the space, vibrating through the air. The shadow recoiled slightly, but didn't retreat. Then I felt a sudden rush of air behind me, as if something was brushing against me. I turned, my breath catching. A figure slipped from the shadows, small, shimmering in the dim light. It was a child. I blinked, struggling to grasp what I was seeing. "Help! the child whimpered, their voice small yet clear. In that moment, time seemed to suspend. My heart sank. I knew this child somehow, but how? I was losing control. The shadows were closing in, and I felt the air tightening around me. I took a step back, thoughts racing. I had to uncover the connection between them, the laughter and the darkness that lingered in this cursed house. As the figure approached, I knew I was about to discover something that would change everything. But first, I had to confront my own past. I could feel the weight of the answer pressing down. It was only a matter of time before I completely surrendered to it. The child stepped closer, their eyes reflecting a mix of fear and familiarity. I couldn't shake the feeling I had seen them before. "What do you need?" I whispered, my voice trembling. I was afraid of what I might learn. "Help," they repeated, the word barely audible. Their small hands reached out, as if trying to bridge the space between us. I could feel the tension in the room, heavy and thick, like something was about to snap. In that moment, I noticed the bear I held. It felt warm against my skin, a strange contrast to the chill in the air. I glanced back at the child, now only a few feet away. "You know this?" I asked, my heart racing as I pointed at the bear. "Is this why you're here?" The child nodded, though dread seeped into the air. "You promised," they said, and I felt a jolt run through me. A promise? What kind of promise? The shadows around us flickered, growing restless. The laughter had returned, echoing with a dark undertone that twisted my stomach. I sensed the urgency in the child's demeanor, but fear clawed at me. What if I was wrong? What if this was a trap? "Why now?" I pressed, searching the child's eyes for answers. "Why are you showing yourself to me?" "Because they're coming," the child said, their voice dropping to a whisper. "And you have to remember." Before I could respond, the laughter erupted again, this time mingled with whispers that coiled around me. "Play with us," they called, the voices playful yet sinister. The shadows seemed to extend, reaching out as if trying to grab hold of me. I could feel the claustrophobia setting in, the walls of the living room closing around me. Was I losing my grip? I took a step away, wanting to run but unable to move. The child looked back at the hallway, and I followed their gaze. Something was shifting in the dark, something more menacing. "Please," I begged, desperate to wrestle back control. "Tell me, what do I need to remember?" The child hesitated, glancing toward the shadow. I could sense the fear in their small frame. "It's about the game," they finally whispered, but then the laughter crescendoed, drowning them out. I turned my head sharply, trying to hold on to their words. "What game?" I asked, but the child didn't respond. They pressed their lips together, eyes wide and pleading. Then quiet hung for a moment, as if time hesitated, but the stillness shattered. A shadow darted out from the hallway, growing larger and darker, moving with a purpose toward us. "Run!" the child screamed, but it was too late. A hand shot out from the darkness, fingers grasping for me. I stumbled back, adrenaline coursing through me. I wanted to fight, to scream, but my voice was lost in the chaos. The bear slipped from my hands, rolling away, and landing near the foot of the couch. In that instant, I saw it. A glimmer beneath the couch, something white and old, forgotten. A piece of paper? An invitation, maybe? Panic tightened my chest. "What is that?" I shouted, almost to myself, as I took a risk and moved towards it. The child tugged at my arm. "Not that!" they cried, but I was too late. I reached for the paper and pulled it out, already sensing the danger spiraling around us. As I unfolded it, everything went dark again, swallowing the room and the child whole. And that's when I saw it. The name scrawled across the page. A name I thought I had buried deep within me, but it clawed its way back to the surface. As the lights flickered back on, I stumbled back, reeling from the realization etched on the paper. My heart raced as I read the name. Emily, my sister. It felt like a lifetime ago, yet here I was, confronting secrets long suppressed in the shadows of my memories. "Get away from her!" The shadow lunged toward the child, and I instinctively interposed myself, knife raised. The laughter surged again, echoing through the room. The weight of my sister's name clung heavily to me. What did it mean? Why was her presence tied to this twisted nightmare? The air grew colder as the figure paused. "She's lost," it hissed, its voice reverberating around us. "Help her." I felt the pull of something ancient and childlike. "But how?" I shouted, desperation rising with each passing moment. The child's wide, fearful eyes bore into mine, and the shadows rumbled ominously, ready to swarm. Then I remembered. I closed my eyes, thoughts racing through fragments of the past. The games we played, the laughter that once filled our home, long before tragedy struck. I had promised her I would always protect her, but somehow I had let her slip away. Suddenly, the laughter subsided, leaving a thick silence. I opened my eyes, realizing I had to confront what was haunting me, not just what was in this room, but the grief I had buried. "Emily, I'm here!" I yelled, hoping somehow it would reach her. In a flash, the darkness shifted. The shadows pulled back, revealing the child, my sister. She stood there, ethereal yet frightened, mirroring everything I feared about losing her. "Remember us!" she cried, voice trembling. And then it clicked. I grabbed the bear, feeling the warmth radiating through it. I squeezed it tightly and focused all my love into the gesture. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I wish I could have saved you." The shadows recoiled as if struck. The air pulsed, and for a moment the light felt brighter. The child's expression softened, full of longing and something else, hope. But the shadow still lingered, swirling angrily. "You have to choose," it screamed, mixing its voice with my sister's pleas. "You can't hold on to both." I screamed in frustration, clutching the stuffed bear tightly. "I won't let you take her." Again! I could feel the room vibrating with energy, a strong current growing beneath me, threatening to consume everything in its path. With every ounce of my will, I launched the bear toward the darkness. "Find your peace, Emily. We can be together again." As it sailed through the air, the room erupted with a blinding light. A cacophony of sound wrapped around me, laughter mingling with cries and whispers, each voice merging into a singular pulse of love and loss. Then came silence. I blinked, struggling to adjust to the new clarity of the lighting around me. I wasn't sure how much time had passed. I steadied myself against the wall as I took in my surroundings, but the living room was empty. Where had they gone? I looked toward the window, a smooth surface undisturbed, as if nothing had ever crawled through. The shadows were gone, leaving only remnants swirling like a distant memory. Panic washed over me. "Emily?" I called out, my voice tinged with desperation. No answer came, just the whisper of wind and distant city sounds filtering through the glass. In that moment, I knew I was free. But part of me lingered back. Questions spiraled within. Had it been real? Had I released them or merely dulled the echoes of the past? I sank onto the couch, clutching the empty bear in my lap, unsure if this was an ending or just another beginning. Even now, in the stillness, doubt crept in. The faint tapping returned, soft yet insistent. I turned to the window, feeling unease settle in my stomach. The night was alive again, shadows flickering just beyond my view. I let out a shaky breath. I couldn't be sure if they were gone forever, or if I had simply postponed the darkness. And as I waited for what would happen next, I understood that shadows are not something we can truly escape. Sometimes they help us remember who we've lost and what we're still fighting against. I moved to the window, peering outside into the unknown. There, beyond the silence, the echoes of whispers lingered. Questions ebbed beneath the surface of my uncertainty. What would the next night bring? I guess I'll never know.